Hey guys, listen today. We're going to be looking at the question, was Jesus actually murdered and raised from the dead? And really, what is the proof? Well, first off, let me say this, that just because I can't prove something doesn't mean it's not true. Let's get that straight. It just means that I don't have the knowledge of that situation, or I don't have understanding. We used to have this saying, we would say, hey, some things we're not going to know till we get to heaven. For instance, why on earth would somebody want to be a Bama fan? I don't know. I guess we won't know that till we get to heaven. And that's a silly example. But it's still true. But thankfully, what I'm talking about today, we can know it. This is history. I'm talking about the death and resurrection of Jesus. And this is a foundational thought. Really, if we were around back then, we could just talk to those eyewitnesses. But we're here now. And I guess that's why Jesus said that those who believe without seeing, like, they're more blessed. And he was talking about us, okay? And this is a big thought about the resurrection of Jesus, because Paul said it's really foundational to our faith. He said that if Jesus was not raised from the dead, then our preaching is useless, saying that about his preaching, but also that our faith was useless. Of course, we know that's not true, but let's first talk about the fact that Jesus died by crucifixion. When you really dig into this, and a lot of the stuff I had to write down, had some help from friends, but this fact that he was crucified might be the most confirmed fact surrounding the life of the historical Jesus. Not only is the crucifixion account occur in all of the Gospels, it also is confirmed by several non-Christian sources, including people like the Jewish historian Josephus, a Roman historian named Tacitus, the Greek writer Lucian, as well as it's in the Jewish Talmud. There was also several accounts of where Jesus' body was taken to a tomb belonging to Joseph of Arimathea. And I like the way John Dominic Crossan, who again is a non-Christian critical scholar, he says it this way, that Jesus was crucified is as sure as anything historical can ever be. So you see, even critics, when they dig into it, they have to admit that Jesus did die by crucifixion. How about the second question? Was Jesus raised from the dead? Well, of course, we believe that as Christians. But again, this is the actual foundation for Christianity, the beliefs that we hold dear. The resurrection was the central message of the early church, and you can see this all in the book of Acts. But the proof is in a couple of things. First of all, the empty tomb, but also in the fact that his followers had real experiences with the risen Jesus. Really the only opposing theory of all this that was recorded by the enemies of Christianity is that the disciples came at night and stole the body. In Matthew 28:13, interestingly enough, we read that the Jewish high priest paid off the soldiers to say that story. And I also find this very ironic because it shows that the Jewish leaders knew that indeed the tomb was empty. Historian and skeptic Michael Grant, again, a non-believer, he concedes that the historian cannot justifiably deny the empty tomb since applied historical criteria show the evidence is firm and plausible enough to necessitate the conclusion that the tomb was indeed found empty. Here's another thought. 11 early sources testify to the willingness of the apostles to not only suffer, but die for their belief in the resurrection. For example, we know that extra-biblically, meaning sources outside the Bible, that Jesus' brother James, he was stoned to death by the Sanhedrin. Also, that the Apostle Paul was beheaded in Rome by Nero. In fact, you can see all the apostles and disciples that they were persecuted and killed, and never once did they deny their claims about Christ. They died for holding on to their eyewitness personal accounts of seeing the risen Jesus. They said, we saw him, and they died saying that. Listen to me. No one willingly suffers and dies for something they know to be a scam, something they know to be false. No, and I love this quote. The best explanation for the facts agreed upon by virtually every scholar of every religious persuasion and worldview who has studied the evidence is that Jesus was a real person that was crucified, and his followers believed and proclaimed that he was actually physically risen from the dead, and that they were tortured and killed, never wavering about these truths. Here is the truth: that Jesus defeated sin, hell, and death when he rose from the dead. And now, listen to me, Satan, because of that, has no hold, no claim over those who are in Christ Jesus. And that is true now and forever. Church, let's walk around with that confidence.